law of Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, and his very close friend, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. But it is clear that things are likely to change under the Biden administration. And the key question here is what are Biden's thoughts as far as Saudi Arabia goes? And we joined on the line this morning by Dr. Daud Abdullah, who is the director at Middle East Monitor. Dr. Abdullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me.
Yes, wonderful you joining us this morning on News and Views here on Salam Media. And we know that, after the Trump administration, the relationship with Saudi Arabia, the closeness, as I mentioned in my introduction, Mohammed bin Salman with Jared Kushner as well, that actually shaped some of the developments in Saudi Arabia and also in other parts around the Middle East. But it does appear at this point in time that under the Biden administration, there is going to be a very, very different relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia.
It seems so. And as you rightly pointed out, under the Trump administration, the relationship took a direction which was a bit unconventional in the sense that it depended primarily upon personal relationships between Kushner and Mohammed bin Salman and Trump. And also, what we see now is an attempt by the Biden administration to reset the relationship. That does not mean that Saudi Arabia will not remain a strategic partner of the United States. It will. There's no doubt about this. But it will be more of an institutional, it will be guided by institutional considerations. And I think the Biden administration particularly would like to address key issues, two key issues. One is the war in Yemen, and second, that of human rights. They want an end to this war. It's clear Biden said so in his election campaign. And he's taken an important step towards that end by stopping or giving orders to end the export of offensive weapons to Saudi Arabia. That's one. And on the issue of human rights also, we've seen the Saudis extend the olive branch to the U.S. by releasing the female human rights activist, Lujan al-Haslul. So this is the context of what's happening at the moment. It's clear that things will not be the same. It will not be business as usual with the Biden administration.
Yes. Now, Dr. Abdullah, the key question here is, at this point in time, who would Joe Biden be comfortable in dealing with? Would it be King Salman or would it be Mohammed bin Salman?
Well, from a point of view of protocol, he has to deal with the king. The king remains the head of state. He's still alive. But for practical purposes, we know that he's senile. He's very old and inactive, and so he depends on his advisors and close circle around him. And in that sense, one expects that the crown prince will be. He would be brought into the discussions at some point. But I think, like the recent announcement that Mr. Biden would speak to the king first rather than to MBS. This is it's protocol. It's the right thing to do. MBS is not the king, and so he has to address the King Salman directly.
Yes. Now, obviously, we all know that MBS has been the power behind the monarchy in recent years, and he has been obviously part of this vision in shaping the future of Saudi Arabia at this point in time. But also at the same time, coming through with baggage. And that baggage, which we know Joe Biden felt very, very strongly about, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. And as you pointed out, there are other human rights violations. The question of Yemen also that is now on the table. And all of these obviously put together, I'm not too sure whether this will actually put MBS in a rather uncomfortable situation.
He has to. He will. He has to change course if he is to enjoy any measure of acceptance in Washington. At the moment, after the murder of Khashoggi, there was a sort of unanimous condemnation on both sides of the aisle in the United States. Both Republicans and Democrats condemned it strongly. They felt that this was a step too far. And Bin Salman, has Khashoggi was not the only one. There is at the moment a court case I think in Washington, filed by the former intelligence chief Saad al-Jabri, who is in exile allegedly in Canada. And I mean, this is an individual. He was the intelligence chief. He has all the files, the information on what is taking place, and he had to defect for his own safety. And the fact that the case is being tried in America means that it is closely watched at the highest level in the United States, from the CIA right through to the Pentagon and the presidency. And there is this a sense of unease with MBS's unpredictability. He's not prepared to adhere to the rules of normal diplomacy, respect laws and conventions, in international relations. The murder of someone in a consulate in a foreign country. These are unprecedented and should not continue. And the thing is that there has been no indication, you see, from MBS after the murder of Khashoggi that he was prepared to step back somewhat. Now the pressure will be applied. And as I said previously, the fact that he released Lieutenant has no, that is an indication that he knows the Biden administration is different from that of Trump. And so he released her. But the thing is, he released her with conditions. She has to stay in her home. She cannot travel. She cannot speak to the press, etc. Now that, I think the Americans will push even further. Because there was no case against her, really. She was not tried or convicted in a court. And so the Americans will press, and not only for her, the absolute release or unconditional release, but for all the other, prisoners of conscience in Saudi jails, the academics, the religious scholars, all these people who are languishing, the businessmen, whose wealth was taken away from them unceremoniously and illegally, one may argue. Biden, they will push, you see, for an end to all of these practices and the unconditional release of all these prisoners, you see, in the Saudi jails.
Yes, and this obviously raises the question in terms of, how much pressure can Joe Biden exert on us, the Saudi authorities, on the Saudi government, particularly Mohammed bin Salman, and also at the same time in terms of the Crown Prince himself. How far is he willing to bend over backwards to accommodate what the United States and Joe Biden is asking of him?
They know, they recognize, the importance of America. I mean, the aircraft that they use, the bombers in Yemen, is all flown with, with the advice of American, experts. They don't have the capability to prosecute a war of the type that they're doing in Yemen without the technical know-how of experts from the United States and Britain also. You see, this is the reality. So this is why you see once Biden said that there will be an end to the export of offensive weapons. That was a signal. And it constituted a great measure of pressure, at least for the beginning, on the Saudis that this war, they have to try to resolve it politically and not militarily.
Yes, and obviously, and just finally, Dr. Abdullah, looking at Israel, and obviously, at the end of the day, whatever happens in terms of the relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States of America, again, Israeli interests obviously will be playing out, and we've seen that during the Trump administration, and towards the end, we've seen all those deals, those negotiations that were struck, those peace deals that were signed, and again, Saudi Arabia will be a focus as far as Israel is concerned as well. And whatever decisions are made, how would they go down in Israel, and would it be in Israel's interests?
Israel has been the big winner from the Trump administration. They've managed to get these normalization agreements with Bahrain and the UAE and Morocco. And Saudi Arabia was, touted to be on that list, and in Sudan. I think under the Biden administration, although they welcomed to see these normalization agreements, I don't think they would push as strongly as the Trump administration did, because at the end of the day, Israel is not really threatened. Its existence is not threatened in the Middle East, so that it's not the priority for the Americans. As we know, in terms of global politics, the real concern of the Americans is to address the issue of China and its activities in the South Pacific. From a Middle Eastern point of view, it would be a question of the status, maintaining the status quo, but putting a lid on MBS's activities. You see, who, by the way, as you rightly pointed out, he hoped that through his relationship with Israel, he was able to, get that carte blanche, that license to act as he wanted freely. Now, the Biden administration has a lot of repair work to do with Netanyahu. They have not been on good terms because of Netanyahu's very close relationship with Trump. And so, any Arab leader, including MBS, who thinks that Israel would be able to safeguard their future and to guarantee their acceptance in Washington, I think it was a bit too over ambitious. You see, much more would be required than just a friendship with Israel. And so even the trajectory towards normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, that would be, slowed down in the coming weeks and months.
Well, Dr. Daud Abdullah, Jazakallah khairan so much for that and for your time with us this morning here on Salam Media. We wish you all the best, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Did you know a sponsored water well and borehole allows children to go back to school, empowers communities, and is a means of